Good afternoon and welcome to today's Ad Week webinar, where we'll be looking at how deep learning changes the game for CPG advertisers. And it's really some opportunities to really understand ways to be using the technology to optimize your performance marketing. And today's webinar is being sponsored by Cognitiv. I'm Stuart File, head of AdWeek's Branded Content Studio, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. Before we begin, I just want to take a few minutes here and make sure that everyone in our audience knows what to expect from today's webinar and is also familiar with the various features of our webinar platform. Our actual presentation today should go somewhere in the 30-minute range. Afterwards, we're going to have plenty of time for audience Q&A. So if at any point during our presentation today, if you have a question for our speaker, just simply use the question tool that you see there on the left side of your screen and submit your question that way. And we're going to get to as many audience questions as we can following our live presentation. It is not too late, by the way, to invite your colleagues to join us today. And we'd love it if they would. About 15 minutes ago, we sent everyone a final reminder email, and in there you will find a link to the registration page for today's event. So grab that link, send it off to your colleagues. There's still plenty of time for them to register, come on in and join us live. But if they can't make it live, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand. And we're going to send a link to that on-demand version to all our registrants later this afternoon. So check your email about 3:30 Eastern time today. You'll get that link to the on-demand version, and certainly feel free to share that link with your colleagues as well, especially if you think that they're going to get some benefit from it. If you are interested in getting a copy of today's slides, we are making a PDF of the slides available to all of our attendees, and you can grab them right now in the Event Resources tab that you see at the top of your screen. So feel free to go on in there and download those. Lastly, I just want to urge everyone to please check out the AdWeek webinar calendar, www.adweek.com/webinars with an S. We've got a whole bunch of webinars coming up. Really, we are sold out September, and we're sold out in October, so we'll be doing a minimum of 3 webinars a week over the coming months. And we're doing our best to keep that calendar up to date with everything coming up. So you'll see everything we have. Please sign up for an upcoming webinar. You'll also get full access to our archive of on-demand webinars there. So that's any webinar that we've done over the past 12 months. Those recordings are always available at adweek.com/webinars. That includes a webinar from our sponsor today, Cognitiv, so you can see their past webinar in our on-demand archive. And speaking of today, let me just take a moment here and introduce our speaker. We are very happy to be joined by Jeremy Fain. Jeremy is CEO and a co-founder of Cognitiv. Again, if you don't know Cognitiv, it offers the first self-learning, fully automated neural network technology for marketers. Jeremy spent plenty of time in the world of ad tech. He previously led North American accounts at Rubicon Project. So, Jeremy, let me pass this on over to you. Well, first off, welcome, and let me pass this on over to you to begin our webinar today.
Thank you, Stuart. And thanks to everybody for joining today, taking some time out of your day at home or in the office or in the bathroom or wherever everybody works these days, and joining us to talk about deep learning today, specifically as it applies to the unique problems of the challenges of CPG these days. So today we're going to talk a lot about deep learning. We're going to learn a lot about deep learning, and we're going to learn about how we can apply it to a number of the problems and challenges that CPG brands are facing these days, especially throughout this pandemic, with some shrinking marketing budgets somewhere. There's more need to be strategic with your ad budget. There's more need to use that to identify net new customers or make new customers loyal, because people are trying out new brands as they move through this pandemic. It's a great time for that. And really understanding if your ad budgets are actually doing what they're supposed to do. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is that there's a lot of data. We hear from the CPG brands that we're working with now that they're getting a lot of reports and a lot of results from performance campaigns, whether that's through Amazon or Walmart or even now Kroger, but they don't really get the ability to understand deterministically if they are advertising to somebody and that is making a difference in that person's ability to buy their product. All right? And even with the increase in direct-to-consumer opportunity and those types of things where you can get a little bit closer to the consumer, you're still not really able to optimize in real time your campaigns to say, okay, this creative is really hitting it with these types of people, and that is adding this number of new customers to our brand. And then are those people coming back in the future, et cetera, et cetera. You're getting the standard sort of reports of aggregate results. How did it work last month? How did it work this last 3 months? And it's not enabling the brands to be agile and to use that budget strategically, as we're talking about today. And what I wanted to talk about today mostly is this idea that this new technology called deep learning is enabling not only the ability to do this and optimize in real time, but also understand, deliver, and measure incrementality into performance marketing campaigns for CPG brands. So that's really what we're going to spend most of our time on today. So deep learning is enabling now CPG brands for the first time really ever outside of those walled gardens to drive and track in-store sales, discover net new customers, and then also really use that data and those insights to go beyond the deterministic data that we have and find new clusters of audiences and customers to advertise offline, on television, print, etc. So to us, we feel like it's one of those holy grails that CPG has been promised for a long time, especially as online advertising has continued to grow, but sort of left CPG out from an ROI, return on ad spend type of measurement that people felt confident in. All right, so why is deep learning changing the game now? Why is it now that these solutions are finally coming to be? So I thought it would be good for us to take a quick deep learning interlude. All right, so what is deep learning? Okay, and why is it so important? Well, we don't have to get into all of the details of exactly what deep learning is for you to understand how big a deal it is and how important it is to everything that we're doing today and how it has changed our society in just less than 10 years, basically. So deep learning is what enables you to speak to your computer or your phone. It's what powers Siri and Alexa, Google Assistant, etc. It also is powering self-driving cars. It's powering the ability for Amazon to have those stores where you walk in and you just take food off the shelf and walk out. All of that computer vision, what we call natural language processing, all of those things are being driven by deep learning, okay? And what exactly is deep learning? Deep learning is a term that is part of a huge umbrella called artificial intelligence, okay? And artificial intelligence is sort of this buckets term of the idea that we can program computers to have human-like intuition, okay? But the reality of that for the past 50 years, when we sort of came up with this idea of robotics and all the science fiction things that you can think of, intelligences that take over the world and create terrible wars and things like that. All of that was not really even close to the scientific reality that we're seeing a little bit more of today, as now we can talk to the phone and it understands what we are saying and asking and things like that. So more recently, machine learning has been an area of great development and research, which is a subset technically of the term artificial intelligence. Okay, it enables machines to learn and improve on a task based with a lot of data. All right. Now, deep learning came along, and the way I tell people the difference between deep learning and machine learning is that machine learning has been around for decades. Okay, but we couldn't speak to our computers, we couldn't speak to our phones, cars couldn't drive themselves, computers couldn't recognize different images for what they were. And then all of a sudden, there was the day before where I couldn't speak to my phone, and then the day after where I could speak basically to everything. And that is how massive deep learning has changed the world, because what it actually does is it enables computers to do the things that humans can't do. It enables computers to do the things that they couldn't do that humans were really good at, okay? Before deep learning, computers were really good at the things actually humans weren't good at, which was memorization and doing math really, really quickly. So for instance, teaching a computer to add and do mathematics takes a second. Literally, it's, we program in it and we press the button and a computer can do those things. And it will never forget it, and it will do it over and over, millions, billions, and trillions times a second. But actually, humans are really bad at memorization and repeating things over and over again. So how long does it take us to learn how to add 2 plus 2? It takes us a long time to do that, because actually humans aren't that great at memorization. Humans are actually great at pattern recognition, okay? So we're very good visually and audibly in pattern recognition. We can understand people's voices even though we've never heard them before. We can understand a certain subset of accents even though we've never heard that accent before speaking our language, English, let's say. We are very good at recognizing that two different colored cats and patterned cats are both cats. We are very good at recognizing that a green apple and a red apple are both apples. We're actually very, very, very good at that. That was our superpower, our unique superpower. Deep learning came along and figured out how to teach computers to do those things too. And so now computers with deep learning can memorize very easily and quickly, but also learn those intuitive things that humans were very good at, such as pattern recognizing visual things or audible things. But pattern recognition and visual for computers in vision or in audio are just ones and zeros. Everything's digitized. Everything is data. So pattern recognition, deep learning, can also be used for the things that we do every day as marketers, which is market to people, predict what the pattern is, find the pattern in the consumers making these purchases, and then find other consumers that are going to do the same things. That's what Cognitiv really started with, bringing deep learning into advertising, was enabling computers finally to predict consumer behavior using a lot of data. Okay. So, how does deep learning make a difference? all right, from an advertising perspective, the cool thing about deep learning is that it, like a human neural network, it has an artificial neural network that enables it to get smarter over time, all right? So neural networks, these deep learning algorithms are synonymous with neural networks. They're birthed, Cognitiv can create them, Google, Amazon, they all have neural networks working behind the scenes, Facebook, etc. They birth these neural networks, and they're baby neural networks. They don't know anything, they can't do anything. And then we train those neural networks like we would as humans, as children, when we teach them how to do things. We train them to predict something, okay, to make a decision about something. And the beauty of neural networks for marketers is that you can have your own neural network. You can have your own brain that is based on your customers and what they're doing, all right? And so what we do is we take a neural network and we train it on the brand's sales and consumers that are buying their products already. And then it goes out and starts to guess who the new consumers are going to be, buy ads for them, and then see if they become new consumers. And as they make those decisions and see if they are right or wrong, just like we do as humans, we take tests, we get answers wrong, we learn from those mistakes, we study all those things. These neural networks, these deep learning algorithms for these brands are self-learning over time so that they are getting smarter and smarter over time, all right? So deep learning algorithms are custom to a brand, and they get smarter over time as they guess and get right and wrong answers, right? So that's what a neural network can do now from a computer advertising perspective. Now, they also perform at scale because deep learning can take an unlimited amount of data over an unlimited amount of time and find very, very discrete patterns in there that says, okay, this person, because they do these 6 things and they're in this demographic and they went to these sites, that's going to be a new consumer for this brand. But another person who has totally different set of demographics and a totally different set of behaviors will also become a consumer and a customer of this brand. So in that way, deep learning is enabling marketers now to have an infinite number of clusters that could be 1, 2, or 3 people big or 1 million people big. But it's enabling marketers to directly target every single one of those clusters, big and small. So it performs at scale. And we'll take you through a little case study at the end about how that goes. All right. So like I said, these things get smarter over time. All right. And this is the results of one of the many competitions we have with other ad tech partners, let's say, who take the machine learning capability of logistic regression and pit it against the new capabilities of deep learning. So as you can see with logistic regression, which is an older technology, having the ability to predict over time with more and more data, logistic regression flattens out at a certain level. Whereas deep learning not only starts at a more accurate level of prediction, it gets better and better over time, especially as it gets more and more data on what's right and wrong. And then this idea of unified optimization, okay, is another sort of huge superpower of deep learning in advertising. Because right now, those of you that are doing a lot of digital online advertising, whether that's video, display, mobile, etc., you're using at least 2, if not 4 or 5 different platforms to create sort of a unified optimization capability, meaning that you have somebody figuring out your creative, okay? Maybe that's dynamic creative optimization, all right? Then you've got a DMP somewhere that you're using to store all the data on, and maybe you're even using a CDP. That's fine, but that has to be connected then to the buying capability in a DSP, and that has to be hooked to sort of contextual targeting and ad fraud and all these other pieces that are all coming at your optimization problem separately and disjointedly. And a lot of the time, especially with the DSPs now, you have a team of people manually pulling levers, trying to figure out, not in real time, how to get yesterday's results again today. All right? All of that is suboptimal. What deep learning allows us to do is take this question, take an impression, okay, the opportunity to show an ad, and ask all at once which creative, which audience, what context, and what time of day, and all these other things will work for this advertiser and this brand. And if it all should work, then let's bid, let's buy that impression and place that ad, okay? So it does it extremely efficiently also. So this is the first technology that really allows sort of the healing of the problem that venture capital pushed into ad tech and advertising online over the last 15 years. So now you don't have to have 4 or 5 different vendors. You can have a single deep learning algorithm answer these questions for you all at once and deliver much better, more efficient, more targeted advertising. And then finally, this performance at scale idea, okay? The performance at scale is what we're talking about with these infinite clusters, okay? But also over time, the consistency and the improvement is really sort of seen. Now, we use this case study, this data comes from our longest running client. It's a 3+ year client. And we just wanted to show this. This is not a CPG client because the CPG solution is brand new. But we wanted to show people what we see when these algorithms get older, get wiser, and have more information, okay? So on the left, this is sort of the test campaign. It's the first month of a test campaign where they didn't have that much, they didn't assign us that much budget, and the deep learning algorithm was young and new. This is specifically an incrementality, an incremental lift campaign. So this was specifically for a client who only wanted us to focus on net new customers and not organic conversions that were going to happen because they spend a lot of money on television, just like CPG advertisers, okay? So the reality of a deep learning algorithm is that it actually does start, it's not very smart at the beginning, all right? So working with deep learning algorithms, you do have to be a little patient. You have to give it a week or 2 weeks to really figure out what's working, what's not, even a month, depending upon your conversion window. And as you can see, we started actually with negative incremental lift. But quickly and over time, the algorithm's getting smarter and smarter because it's learning every day from the new data and results that are coming in. And ultimately, in that first month, we were able to end up with 28% incremental lift. That's usually really, really good for any advertiser. But what happens with our capability is that it kept improving as the advertiser increased exponentially its monthly spend. And so now we have a much, much larger spend on a monthly basis with this advertiser, but the incremental lift has continued to grow and is at about 150% to 200% on a regular basis. So you've got something that gets smarter over time, something that unifies the optimization question so you're using your impressions really efficiently, and then finally, it can perform as you increase your budget. These are all the hallmarks of what deep learning can do for you, okay? All right. So does it work for CPG? That's the question. And this is a new product, okay? So we don't have a ton of different case studies for it, But one of our earlier case studies we've done showed us that we could get performance incrementality here. Okay, and so let's take a step back and talk about how we set up a client for this. For any client, in fact, it's the same really for CPG or any other. We have to have data that says that gives us deterministically that we showed an ad to somebody and they took the action we're looking for. In this case, a sale. In this case, a sale in a store. Okay. Historically, for CPG, that has been very hard to come by, that data. Okay. The Krogers of the world, the Walmarts and the Amazons, they have built solutions that can do that, but they keep it for themselves, and they can only track it for their stores. But there are data capabilities out there, data providers out there that enable us to now have in-store consumer deterministic, person by person, purchase by purchase data that we can track from advertising exposure to in-store purchase. Okay, and there's a couple of big names out there that offer this kind of data now, and we're working to use that data to power these deep learning algorithms. Okay, so that data exists. We get that data, especially for the brand that we are building the algorithm for. We take a look at who has been buying their brand for the last 30, 60, 90 days, depending upon how many people do that, how much data we need, how long back the brand wants to look, how far back. We push that into a baby little neural network, and it learns and becomes smarter and learns to answer the question of who is buying this specific product. Okay. Then we set it out into the world, and it starts buying advertising, showing new people who it thinks will be new to buying this product, and watches to see with the deterministic data if those people do buy that product. Okay. And so with this one, it was a health and wellness brand within CPG. And, you know, as you can see on the right, we've got the required up and to the right graph, but it also takes this graph is looking at different attribution windows to say, okay, 3 days, 2 days, or 1 day from showing an ad, did they make a purchase? We saw sort of an overall top line increase in sales, but we really saw a 70% incremental lift, which was really lowering their cost per acquisition. And this is the key to me from an advertising perspective. If we're talking about tighter budgets, how do we conquer new people? What are we looking for here in getting, look, I spend a lot of money on television already. How or now I have that money and I need to move it online because people are watching less TV. You know, how do I spend that money from a top of the funnel all the way down to moving them to the bottom of the funnel? This is where it all comes into the efficiency play. This is where the algorithms can really solve those problems for you. So great, performance was great. Of course, we're going to show you a good case study on performance, but you also are getting new and interesting campaign insights from these algorithms. Okay, so these algorithms are doing this stuff. They're getting these results. Well, how are they getting the results, right? What are these clusters? What are these infinite clusters that they're looking at? Because, you know, for me as a brand, I probably know my top 5 clusters, but that only accounts for 50 or 60% of my sales. How do I reach the rest of these people? Or how do I reach more people that I haven't saturated already? Right? So this health and wellness brand actually was surprised to find that the algorithm had identified high-earning, educated men. We say, it might be hard to see here, but what we do is we take all the results of this data and we do a cluster analysis on it. So we cluster around a number of different demographic and behavioral capabilities data, and then we push that all together and we we work with the client to figure out, in this case, they wanted 7 different clusters, big clusters of people to take a look at. And so for this client, we found that the big cluster we had high home equity, so they're homeowners. They had graduate degrees and undergraduate degrees, and they generally, for some reason, worked in management and finance operations. So it was a more sophisticated male buyer that really hadn't been the focus of this brand. And it wasn't necessarily a women-only brand. It just wasn't a brand that had focused its advertising on this type of cluster. So these types of insights are just one sort of piece of the analytics package that deep learning algorithms can give back to CPG brands. You can get all the standard stuff like what times of day is it choosing, what times of day is working better, what days of the week are working better, what websites or apps are these people using more, what are the affinities, all these types of things. Those are the types of insights that are really interesting to to the marketers that are using these deep learning algorithms, because they really are getting this superhuman AI deep learning algorithm that is teaching itself what's working and what's not working, and then it's going out there and making it all work correctly. And why is it all working correctly? What is it targeting? These insights are now sort of available for CPG brands, as well as all the other verticals that we handle. Okay. All right. So deep learning is turnkey now for CPG. It's scalable. It's consistent. It uses your existing customers to train the models, to train these algorithms. And you can do straight performance if you want with these algorithms, but really a lot of people have been so focused on incrementality and so disappointed in their ability to really consistently figure out incrementality month to month that now you can do that too. Gives you these actionable insights that you can take to television, you can take to print, you can take to your creative agencies to try to focus on these new clusters, and then use those creatives back in the algorithms because they're able to identify these smaller and smaller clusters that scales because you're putting them all together, right? And remember, over time, it's learning, it's on its own. And so, an interesting thing that we've found with these algorithms is that let's say you change your creative approach, or you change, or something changes like COVID, all right? The customers that we've had that have been on from before COVID and after COVID, during and after COVID, those algorithms are self-correcting themselves, okay? They're finding the new patterns of consumer behavior. So we have a bunch of interesting slides that we show in the more technical meetings about different clusters popping up and the algorithms identifying those and improving performance in the new clusters while old clusters of customers retreat. So that's really been a cool part of these algorithms. As they are a living, breathing thing, they can adjust to the conditions out there in the market. And then finally, from a nice part about CPG here, if you have a direct-to-consumer online retail capability, e-commerce, you can just pixel. That's easy peasy. That's what sort of every other vertical is doing. But for CPG, because the challenge is in-store sales, deterministic in-store sales, we have to get that data from these third parties. And so you don't have to do any pixeling or setup. All we have to do is talk from a brand perspective and then make sure that we have enough data in these third-party data vendors to get the models going and the deterministic loop going. So that's the really cool part, I think, about deep learning, especially for CPG. We're really excited to be able to offer that now to the CPG industry, that you guys can use this now. Amazon and Walmart and and those guys are not really offering optimization capabilities that are algorithmic. They're enabling some reporting and manual tuning, but I think this is really the way everyone will be going in the future from a CPG perspective as we take a look down the next couple of years. So that's it for me. Love to start taking some questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And we are going to move into some audience Q&A in just a second here. A whole bunch of them have been coming in pretty fast and furious. Just want to invite our audience again, if you have a question for our speaker today, Jeremy Fain from Cognitiv, please just use the question tool that you see there on the left side of your screen, and we're going to get to as many as we can over the next 10, maybe 15 minutes or so. So again, please ask your questions. Listen, if we don't have time to get to your question, I always make sure that they all get forwarded over to our sponsor, so there is always the opportunity for an offline response. Some quick reminders here for everyone. If you do want a copy of today's slides, and again, there was a lot that Jeremy covered in there, you can download a PDF of the slides right now in the event resources area. So you'll see that tab at the top of your screen, so feel free to go on in there and download them. And also, of course, share those with your colleagues if you think that they're going to get some benefit from this. And then, speaking of sharing and record things like that, just a reminder that today's webinar was recorded or is being recorded, and we're going to make that on-demand version available. It should be live about an hour and change after the end of this webinar, but we're going to send you a link about 3:30 Eastern time today. So when you get that thank you email from us, you'll see that link. Again, you can return, listen to it again if you so choose, or you can certainly share that link with your colleagues so they can come and get some of this knowledge, or better yet, have them register. We'll send them that link directly once it is live. So, Jeremy, let's get into some of these questions that are coming in here, and let's talk a little bit. You know, I think we talked. You sort of alluded to this, and look, the world has changed rather dramatically over the past 6 months, and certainly CPG area has changed. So, with CPG marketers, and sort of as they're looking at all of these sort of shifting consumer priorities going on, and decreasing in brand loyalty that's occurred, you know, with the forced trial that occurred early on during COVID and things like that. So how can really sort of CPG marketers really capitalize on that behavior? Because it doesn't seem like anything, you know, these sort of quick turns and pivots that consumers are making, it doesn't look like this is going to end anytime soon in their behavior.
Yeah, consumer behavior and consumers' purchasing patterns have changed drastically over the last 6 months, as CPG brands obviously know. You know, one of the big problems we had in the beginning was that we had logistics and supply chain problems where we're selling out of a lot of different things, and so it wasn't available. And that drove consumers to try new brands. You know, loyal consumers were trying new brands because they had to. You know, I think that's one of the things that is an opportunity right now for CPG advertisers, is to conquer new customers, to make relatively new customers more loyal, et cetera, and really understand sort of the new cluster patterns that they're seeing because of the pandemic. So that's just one piece. But also we've seen, you know, budgets fall back because of the unknown. They fell back in March and April and May. Are they coming back now? If they're coming back, they can't really come back to the same television. How are they going to readjust those budgets, et cetera? In the end, though, this is the time for them to be able to be more strategic if they can, and really show the return on ad spend results that is hard when you're doing just branding. You know, we have an opportunity now to move those branding dollars into performance dollars and to show a return on ad spend, a lower cost per acquisition, and also maybe create loyal new consumers in this time of sort of chaos.
Got it. So another question came in here, Jeremy, and trying to understand sort of the role of deep learning and this idea that, again, if the seed of the algorithm that you're using is sort of the current customer, how do you sort of address prospecting as a means of driving growth, right? Which is, obviously for a lot of brands, growth comes from finding sort of those new segments that they can go for. But if what you're training it on is your current segment, how would you identify that?
Yeah. So the data that we get from these third parties is individualized to a consumer purchase, meaning that, okay, let's say I'm a toothpaste brand. Let's say that I'm a lipstick brand, right? I heard on or let's do eyelashes, because I heard that people aren't buying lipstick right now because of the mask. Nobody's putting on lipstick anymore, but they're putting on a lot more mascara. So let's say that we were a mascara brand and we wanted to figure out prospecting. What we do at Cognitiv is definitely prospecting. We're not doing retargeting. We're not, because first of all, there's not a lot of retargeting available because people aren't going to websites to look for CPG products, generally speaking. So we're taking the people that have been buying that mascara brand for the last month, 2 months, 3 months, depending upon what the brand wants, and we're going out there and we're not targeting those people. We're targeting only prospects. Now, our data is not complete, okay? It doesn't mean that we have every single consumer that is buying this eyelash brand, this mascara brand, okay? But we won't. So the bigger question on an incrementality perspective is, if you really want to find out if you're incrementally getting new customers, because this mascara brand also does television and print ads and all these things, is that you have to really run a continuous incrementality experiment, which means that you have to figure out and watch people that have not been exposed to your advertising from a digital perspective at the very least, and see if they convert, okay? And so sometimes we do that by buying a PSA instead of an ad for this brand, okay? That's traditionally how you're supposed to do it, and a lot of our clients that do incrementality spend up to 10% of their budget buying PSAs because they want to really do it very scientifically in the back end, and they're tracking everything on their end and things like that. But there's also ways of doing ghost ads and ghost control and things like that, so you don't have to buy PSAs if you don't have the budget for that. And then you watch those people who have not been exposed and see if they convert, all right? And that shows you sort of where you are not, those are the organic, non-incremental people that are converting. And then as you show ads to people who do convert, you can compare the difference between those two populations and figure out if you are actually gaining net new customers. There's a lot more to it, but generally speaking, these deep learning algorithms can take the sort of standard setup on an incrementality experiment and just continue it forever and continuously improve their incrementality, and meaning that they're much, much better at identifying people who need ads to convert versus folks who don't need ads at all and they'll still convert.
Okay. Actually, Jeremy, since people did ask about how to learn more about Cognitiv, I did just flash, and I am keeping your email address up here. Again, it's cognitiv.ai for those who are looking for this, and no E in Cognitiv, but I just want to make sure that they all see this going forward. Question here. There are sort of two trends going on in the market right now when we think about CPG and of the past 6 months, right? And one certainly is the growth of e-commerce for what had typically been an in-store execution. And then the related one, which is what I want to call the growth of retail media. The idea here that as people are going and shopping and looking and discovering products, that their ads are not just simply going across the web, but very frequently going into retail areas, whether it is, we always know about Amazon and Walmart, and now Target and Kroger and Best Buy and CVS and all these other large retailers that have some level of retail media execution. Can you address, Jeremy, where all of this fits with what is, again, those two trends of the more of the product discovery and shopping for CPG going on in an online world, and where people and where these brands are actually finding that they're advertising, where they're sort of going there, both, in that sort of virtual shelf space?
Yeah, sure. So shopper marketing is very overall CPG advertising and marketing is very multi-channel, very media mix. It's very complicated. How do you know if this is working more than this? I understand all that. And what I've talked about with a number of CPG advertisers that are sort of pulling their hair out and saying, I'm not really sure of any of this unless I take I did one of my internships at Procter and Gamble, and the old and quote unquote simple way to do it, I think is still the best way to do it in many ways, is that you either launch a new brand or you try new messaging and new offers in a very in an isolated market, and you see if it works. But that takes time, that takes effort, all those things. And what I say to the CPG brands is that digital advertising, especially with this new incrementality capability, gives you a way to isolate digital to show whether it is helping or not doing that much, because you've already done the job with the aisle, the end caps, the in-store commercials, the coupons, all the different ways that you can market products, especially new products. Incrementality online and deterministic data gives you a way to isolate this part of your budget and show you that you can actually deliver net new customers to the brand. Okay. Now, that may look like it costs a lot, but when you add up all the different pieces of the puzzle that you're probably picking up a lot of new customers from all the other pieces of your media mix also. This at least can say, okay, in digital, we're able to do this, and we're able to monetize it, and we're able to get very advanced insights that we can now apply to other pieces of the media mix.
All right. Jeremy, I think we've got time for one more quick question here. So, look, one of the things right now, the other thing that seems to be going on with everyone, and that is, we live in the world of the pivot, right? Budgets that used to be set maybe even at the quarterly basis seem to be at the weekly basis now. Right? Marketers and advertisers don't know if things are growing or shrinking. It's very hard to predict going forward. So with all that happening right now, what should CPG advertisers be doing to sort of reconfigure their marketing dollars, and how they can do this in light of sort of the uncertainty of ad budgets?
Yeah, so my background is a little bit all over the place, and I've ended up in sort of the digital realm because, I worked on the marketing side early on in my career, and I just found it to be hard to correlate data. And there was more and more data out there. And that's why I personally have stuck to digital addressable media in the later part of my career, because I'm an engineer by training. I like the science. I like the data. I want to say this works. this didn't work. I don't want to say, hey, this worked, let's do it again, and then next month it doesn't work, because then, I mean, what are you doing, right? And so for me, as an ex sort of agency marketer guy in the technology world now, we're trying to build these solutions that solve that problem for the advertiser, that say, look, you have money to spend, you need to really know if it worked, and was it efficient? And can you make it more efficient over time? Can you hit a place where your business is going to be profitable, your return on ad spend is high enough that you can run a profit by doing this prospecting? And frankly, in my experience, very few partners out there that are helping these brands can deliver those consistent results. And I know that that's tiring. And so that's sort of my advice is addressable is much better. Digital is much better, because you really can track how your money is being spent and the results that are being spent. And frankly, now even with television spending, there's, at least at an aggregate level, you can get a lot more results and insights from connected TV and even set-top boxes that you weren't able to get even 5 years ago. So I see this all moving in that direction. How quickly it happens, I don't know. But a lot of brands are using digital to lead their offline insights, and I think that's pretty smart.
Great. Well, Jeremy Fain, CEO of Cognitiv, I want to thank you for taking some time today and, again, sharing your insights on where deep learning is going and the impact on CPG advertisers, and also for taking some time to answer audience questions here. We are, again, getting to the end of our time. I do want to let people who did submit questions that we didn't have a chance to get to know that I will forward them over to Jeremy and the team at Cognitiv, so that there is the opportunity for an offline response as well. Some final reminders here for everyone. Again, if you want the slides, you'll find them right now. Event Resources tab, top of your screen. Also check your email around 3:30 today. We're going to send you that link to the on-demand recording for today's webinar. And finally, adweek.com/webinars, our webinar calendar. See what we've got coming up. Sign up for an upcoming webinar. Lots of really good ones in the next few weeks. And check back often, because we're always adding to that. You'll also get access to our archive of on-demand webinars as well. So again, I want to thank our speaker, Jeremy Fain from Cognitiv, and Cognitiv being our sponsor today. I want to thank our audience for taking time out of your busy day, and we look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming Ad Week webinar.